now. So good afternoon or good evening or good morning, depending on when you're looking at our show. So our most recent show that's up now are photographs by William Short. And William, or I'm going to call him Bill now. Bill is an old friend of mine. Bill and I taught together many, many years ago. We've known each other since 1986, and I have been off and on following his work. So, Bill, introduce the work you're doing now. Talk a little bit about it, please.
Okay. So I'm a photographer based in Los Angeles, California. I grew up in Ohio and moved away from there many years ago, but still have deep connections and lots of family in Southern Ohio. This particular project is called My Red America, and it's documentary photographs that I've taken in a county called Adams County in southwestern Ohio, about 50 miles from Cincinnati, right on the Ohio River. And one of the, aside from this being a family home for me, even though I grew up with my parents in Cincinnati, my grandparents, both grandparents, lived in two small towns, Winchester and West Union in Adams County. I spent every summer there and really loved going there, really loved the place. But as I got older, as I got drafted, went to Vietnam, came back from Vietnam, became rather, not rather, but very much progressively politicized, worked in the anti-war movement after I got back from Vietnam. I was a combat soldier in Vietnam. And eventually I became a bit estranged from this neighborhood because it's very conservative, very white, very Christian neighborhood. And I became much more liberal than anybody would have a right to be in Adams County. 81.8%, I believe, in 2016 voted for Donald Trump for president. It's about, I think it's about 92 or 94% white. And I live in Los Angeles, where we celebrate 88 different languages spoken in the public school system. So it's a very eclectic, very international community here, which is one of the things I love about being here.
In relation to Adams County, I know that the vast majority of these works were done in 2016, 2018. How long had it been since you'd been there?
I think it would have been early 80s. So it would have been nearly 30 years. And one of the reasons I decided to go back was because of the political campaigns of 2016-15, and Donald Trump coming into office.
Right. Did you have any preconceptions about what it was going to be like since you hadn't been there since the 80s?
I actually did, because I had been keeping up somewhat with some of the news of the place. I went to Antioch College in Yellow Springs, Ohio, for my undergraduate degree, and I've gone back there a number of times to visit friends that I still have there. And I did know that all of Southern Ohio had suffered greatly with the community moving from an agrarian society where the main industry were the 200-acre farms that were dotted throughout the county. Right. And they supported the restaurants, the feed stores, the hardware stores, the barber shops, and the churches in these two small towns.
Right.
Both towns, Winchester is 800 people, and West Union is about, I think it's about 2,500. So they're very small.
Small. So I'm obviously personally familiar with a lot of your previous work, and do you think you could summarize relatively quickly how you see this fitting in with your previous work philosophically?
Well, yeah, sure. Almost all of my work has a kind of a social political bent to it, and in some ways I kind of sometimes kind of loosely refer to myself as a photographic archaeologist.
Mhm.
contemporary archaeologist, digging through um, various places. Like you go to my website, you'll see that I spent a fair amount of time photographing the Salton Sea,
Right.
which is an artificial sea that was built in, basically it was a floodplain that was flooded and became a resort area in Southern California.
Right.
I've done other projects where I've photographed portraits of 13-year-old kids, basically in the way, in kind of a way that August Sander did in the 1920s with his portraits of the 20th century.
Right.
And more contemporarily, Renike Dijkstra, a German photographer, who's
Yep.
also done similar kinds of work. Very straightforward, very straight portraits. You know, the whole philosophy kind of revolves around a friend of mine who passed away a few years ago that I taught with at Cal Arts, Alan Sekula. And Alan Sekula's writings had always had a very great influence in my work. Prior to me meeting him, I met him in graduate school, and then he hired me to come to Cal Arts to teach with him.
Well, yeah, maybe you can, after we're through with this, if you would give me a link of something to his that I can put up on the site.
Absolutely.
So we have 3.5 minutes left.
Oh,
All right. Why don't you share the screen of one photograph, and we'll do it sort of quickly.
okay.
Go ahead.
I'll do one. I may have to jump to a second one to really flesh this out, but let me share the screen and I'll show you.
Okay. Let me pause for a moment.
Okay. In generally in landscape photography and traditional landscape photography, you usually talk about converging lines, that single point perspective kind of thing of leading you into space. And if you look at a lot of work from the new topographics in the 1970s, particularly Robert Adams and Stephen Shore, and even the color photography of William Eggleston, even though he wasn't part of the new topographics, I like to, a lot of times I'll use that depth of field and I'll use that converging lines, but a lot of times I try to flatten the space with shapes. And in this sense, this is what you'll see in my work. You'll see large shapes. Can you see the cursor moving here?
Yep.
Okay, so this tree, this shape here. Vertical lines are also very important, repetition of vertical lines. Even color, this little repetition of this red
Right.
little flag.
Yeah.
And then the complementary colors or contrasting colors, red and green. That shows up a lot. And then in work particularly like this, red, white, and blue also becomes, because this is about the conservative Southern
Exactly.
California, Southern Ohio. So you have red, white, and blue. That shows up a lot in the photographs as well.
One of the things for me in this particular series, they're very emotional. I mean, I can feel the emotion of these shots. All right, I hate to rush. The problem, as you know, and those of you who are
Right.
watching it know, we're limited to 10 minutes. So we've got about 1.5 minutes left. If you want to stop share, and I'm just wondering if you have any advice for any of the students who are watching this in relation to photography.
Read. Photographs are a visual language. And the more you read and the more you look at photographs, the more they're going to intersect and become very informative. I read a lot of critical histories. I read a lot of critical theory about photography. As far as practicing the craft of photography, try to buy and use the best equipment you can, but the best equipment isn't always the right equipment. You can use a Hoga plastic camera and take wonderful photographs. It's
Right.
not really about the equipment, it's about the image. And another thing that I like to think about is pre-visualization and pre-visualizing what you want your image to be. I'm not a street photographer. I don't do grab shots. I always have a goal in mind and I pre-visualize how I want those things to look.
I'm gonna pause for a second. Go ahead.
Okay. Well, one of the other things you should do is have a community. That community could be other professional photographers or people like you that are just beginning, but it's really important to communicate and talk to one another, look at each other's work, give comments, and create a community for yourself.
Great. Thank you, Bill. And
You're
I hope
welcome, Mark. Great
everybody
to see you.
enjoys looking at the show. Thank you.
Okay, great. Hope you